New Life Irvine, and I'm very privileged to come back again. Last workshop was titled Our Design, and I'll review it just a little bit before we go on today. So, during that workshop, we talked about how we're designed for attunement and secure attachment. Just a quick review if you weren't here last time. Attunement means responding to someone in a way that shows we see how they're feeling as we understand and are willing to be with them in that state. God is ever attuning to us and desires to be our secure attachment figure, and He is more than able to reparent us into secure relationships with Him and with others. And so today, the workshop name is called Relationships in Real Life. So it's going to get a little more real today. Okay? We also talked about the attachment styles, and I'm going to review more in detail. So even if you weren't here, you're going to be caught up quite quickly. One secure attachment style, and the other three are types of insecure attachments, which means there's more of those amongst us, right? All right, so starting with a review on how different attachment styles will present during our childhood and adulthood. So today you are going to analyze yourself quite a bit. And if you wanted to take notes, there are papers on your table and pens. The index cards are for questions for the large Q&A time, so you're more than welcome to start jotting down questions if you like. So beginning with secure attachment in children, how would that present? Well, they're able to separate from parents. They seek comfort from parents when they're frightened. Sounds like it's supposed to be that way, right? Return of the parents is met with positive emotions and prefers parents to strangers. Now, in adults, by the time you're older, if you had secure attachment growing up, you would have trusting, lasting relationships, tend to have good self-esteem, comfortable sharing feelings with friends and partners, and you would deliberately seek out social support. So that's the secure attachment. And I'm going to go fast because we have so many slides and we only have a limited time, so go ahead and jot down your notes if you have them. For the anxious ambivalent attachment, in children, they would be wary of strangers, become greatly distressed when the parent leaves, and they don't appear, or sometimes they don't appear to be comforted by the return of the parent. Difficult to soothe. In the adult, the anxious attachment could show reluctance to become close to others. They can worry that their partner does not love them or maybe will leave them, become very distraught when a relationship ends. Now, what about the avoidant attachment? The avoidant attachment in children, they might avoid their parents, not seek much comfort or contact from the parents, and show little or no preference between the parent and the stranger. But in adults, they might have problems with intimacy, invest little emotion in social and romantic relationships, and be unable or unwilling to share deep, honest thoughts and feelings with others. Now, the last type of insecure attachment is disorganized. I'm going to talk about age 1 and age 8 because this is significant. This is the most dramatic, most erratic, actually, of attachment styles, and thankfully the least common. At age 1, they may show a mixture of avoidant and resistant behaviors. They may seem dazed, confused, or apprehensive. And during toddler years, they may look very just bizarre, not comforted by their parents, and sometimes they would actually gravitate toward a stranger and be very inconsistent. At age 8, they may take on a parental role, and some children act as a caregiver even toward their own parent. I have seen a case like that where one of my child clients would tell me they had to remind their parents to eat. How about during adulthood? How might that present? They might have difficulty with intimate relationships, find them confusing. They can become insensitive at times, selfish, controlling towards significant others, have difficulty taking responsibility for actions, the actions that hurt others, and crave relationships, but unable to develop deep relationships. So I'm gonna move on to talk about like where does this all come from? Predispositions and origins. Organically or biologically, medically, there could have been sensory processing issues growing up, or maybe there was a diagnosis or even undiagnosed high-functioning autism, formerly known as Asperger's. There could have been medical issues like deafness, skin problems, in utero exposure to drugs and alcohol, and traumatic events. Familial, social, cultural factors could include, this is not all-inclusive list, but I was thinking of examples, hospitalization or extended hospital stays for a child or a parent. That makes sense because there's just this extended time of being separated. Or maybe a child with a parent who had personality disorder, like borderline personality or narcissistic personality disorder. Perhaps the pregnancy of that child was unplanned, unwanted, a complete surprise, and even though they're raising the child, not showing that, but sometimes that seeps out. And sometimes, actually, I've heard of cases where when the child was older, the parent would actually say that, you weren't really wanted in the first place. Oh, how scarring that could be. Financial burdens could be a cultural issue or a social issue. Family discord, or even to the point of violence, of abuse, of neglect, physical, sexual abuse, and where the safety is jeopardized. Now, culturally, I have an example. I see the faces in here are majority Asian American, right? Culturally, I know that even the generation before me and the generation before my parents, emotions were not very expressed easily. As a matter of fact, sometimes you weren't really allowed to really express deep or significant emotions like frustration, anger, or sadness. And we were taught, or maybe indirectly taught, to internalize these kind of frustrations and internalize dissatisfaction. And perhaps it was considered disrespect to share how you disagree or how you're disappointed or how you don't want something, right? So, and regarding mental health issues, it's a lot better nowadays, but in the past, that was all kept secret within the home. You don't share those things, we don't tell others, otherwise that can bring shame to the family. Because in the Asian culture and even the Latino cultures, right, the collectivistic mindset. Now, the 4 characteristics of a healthy attachment are as follows. And if any or all of these were not there growing up, this can also be a predisposition for unhealthy attachments. For example, proximity maintenance means the natural desire to be close and near the people we are attached to. But you know, our parents, many of them are immigrant parents, right? And when they came to this country, they had to work a lot. Sometimes 2 full-time jobs. It's not like they intentionally weren't present. They physically couldn't be there for us. And then when they come home, they're so tired. They don't have time to be like, how was your day? Right? So if they just couldn't be around, then sometimes these kind of attachments can't occur because the proximity maintenance could not be kept. Or the phrase safe haven means returning to the attachment figure for comfort and safety in the face of fear or threat. So let's give an example. What if a child grew up in a very abusive home where there's domestic violence? Okay. For example, the mother is being physically abused by the father, and the child is witnessing this. witnessing how helpless and passive she is, and how fearful the father is acting. So neither can be protectors, right? Neither can be a safe haven for the child. Secure base means that attachment figure acts as a base of security from which the child can explore the surrounding environment. And it's not intentionally wrong, but many parents who have anxiety themselves are very overprotective. Or maybe they're too busy, so when they go to a park, they keep their child very, very close. Don't go more than 10 feet away. And sometimes the child just really wants to explore, really wants to run around. And I have seen some mothers who leash their kid, right? Like as if they're a pet. So I'm like, oh my goodness. Definitely not gonna form the secure base, right? And separation distress, anxiety that occurs in the absence of the attachment figure. Okay, so we're gonna go through now how these manifest in our adult relationships. And we're gonna go through those 4 attachment styles one more time. So, in the securely attached, what would it look like in marriage or in romantic relationships? The husband and wife are able to comfort one another and soothe each other, especially when it's needed. In parenting, they are able to soothe their child or children during emotional turmoil, maintain composure, even though your child or family members are getting you upset or disappointed, and not take it personally, especially if that negative behavior is toward you as a parent. In the workplace, even if there's a conflict, there is possible resolution because you don't avoid it and you have confidence to approach it. And in friendships, little or no issues with initiating activities, asking for help, engaging in conflict resolution, and overcoming difficulties or differences together. Okay, moving on to the ambivalent anxious attachment. How would that manifest in our adult relational styles? Well, in marriage, if you grew up with this attachment style or still have it, you may want to be in a relationship and crave feelings of closeness and intimacy with your significant other or your spouse, but you struggle to feel that you could fully trust or rely on your partner. Or you may find it difficult to observe boundaries, viewing space between you and your significant other as a threat. And that's something that can provoke anxiety, anger, or panic, or fear that your partner no longer wants you. Or you might need constant reassurance and lots of attention from your partner. Honey, do you love me? I just told you an hour ago I loved you. Others may criticize you for being too needy or clingy, and you may struggle to maintain even close relationships because of that. What about in parenting? How could this look like in your parenting? Possible difficulties to discipline your child when they need it, at the time that they do. Or having inability to say no out of fear of being disliked by your child. Or feeling more comfortable to be like a friend. Or maybe you want to look cool in front of your kids. In the workplace, there could be preoccupation with acceptance from the group and seeking approval. There's a strong fear of rejection or negative evaluation, and therefore there's a hypersensitivity to feedback, even though the feedback is just like something minor. Have less ability to work independently and autonomously, and having this over-reliance on the supervisor and leader. Maybe also that reassurance, did I do this right? How can I do better? Can I do this right? In friendships, conformity to group wishes, even though that's not what you would have preferred. Overwhelming desire for interpersonal closeness and this high investment in close relationships. And then that's why if things don't work out, feeling underappreciated or dissatisfied. Okay, what about the avoidant? avoidant attachment style manifesting in our adult relationships. And I gave you the treat, for those of you who came 2 weeks ago, that this is the style I think I experienced growing up and probably still healing from. So in marriage or romantic relationships, you may be seen as an independent person, content to care for yourself and don't feel that you need others. The more someone tries to get close to you or the needier a partner becomes, the more you tend to withdraw. Or you're uncomfortable with your emotions, and partners often accuse you of being distant, closed off, rigid, intolerant at times. And in return, you accuse them of being too needy. And you're prone to minimize or disregard your partner's feelings, keep secrets from them, even engage in affairs or in the relationship in order to regain your sense of freedom. So I grew up thinking I'm like commitment phobic, and I just kind of left it at that. And I realized, oh, maybe it's from my avoidant attachment style. Now in parenting, well, how could that show? How could that manifest? As a parent, you might have difficulty feeling and or showing empathy to your child when they're distressed. The solution-oriented comes more easily rather than providing emotional support and understanding. And receiving affectionate responses from your child doesn't really matter, or it's not really that important. Like, okay, gave me a hug today? Okay, thank you. So I wondered, like, how was I parent? Because my two parents were very different regarding their style toward me. So it's very confusing. The workplace. The avoidant attachment style may make someone avoid interpersonal closeness and group tasks, and you would prefer to work alone. Not that you dislike people, you just prefer to be alone, feel distant, and you using a work commitment to avoid socializing. Maybe I do that too, because I have so much to do, and there's lunch going on. A lot of people are like, I can't wait to like go take my lunch break. And I'm here like, I gotta hurry up and finish. Seek less support from others and not conform to group wishes. In friendships, you may prefer fleeting, casual acquaintances to long-term intimate ones, or you seek out peers who are equally independent and ones who will keep their distance emotionally as well. There might be a distrust towards others, an inability to open up with them regarding your deep, honest thoughts. And I actually have seen this in myself as well in my friendships, especially after college. I would prefer to just keep my thoughts to myself and not share my discomfort of like how I was being treated or how somebody was sharing their thoughts back with me. Okay, for the disorganized, I lumped it all together to describe it all at once because in this attachment style, all of these can occur through marriages, relationships, parenting, workplace, and friendships. For example, you might find intimate relationships confusing and unsettling, often swinging between emotional extremes of loving them and hating them, and just going back and forth. Or there could be an insensitivity towards your partner or your friend or coworker, which then appears to be, not intentionally, selfish, controlling, and untrusting. And then this could lead to explosive or even abusive behavior, like a vicious cycle. And you can be just as hard on yourself as you are on others. For example, as a parent, say that your child accidentally broke a dish, total accident. This could trigger an unpredictable anger response, and then later to make you regret that, and then make you feel guilty. However, on another occasion, you have no reaction at all to something very similar. how confusing that could be, right, for your child. You may exhibit antisocial or negative behavior patterns, abuse of alcohol, drugs, being prone to aggression or violence, and none of these are intentional. The antisocial personality disorder is a different story, and that's more maybe intentional. But when I say these descriptions of the disorganized, it is not intentional. They don't even know why they're doing it. And while you crave security and safety of a meaningful, intimate relationship, you also sometimes feel unworthy of love and are terrified of being hurt again. And many times when we dig deeper, your childhood may have been shaped by abuse, neglect, or trauma, and thus unintentional neglect and mistreatment may be shown to your children and being passed down. Now, let me move on to a few words about how our attachment styles can manifest in my adult relationship with God. I talked about like all these other human relationships, right? But with God, what could it look like? For the one with secure attachment, they would see God as good, kind, and stable. Not just know it in here, but really see that and really experience that. Able to connect with God, trust God's work in their life, even if the circumstances are painful or chronic. Able to engage in meaningful spiritual friendships and fellowship with others. What about for the ambivalent anxious? They crave intimacy with God, but tend to also pull away from God out of that ambivalence, fearful that God might leave or abandon, remove his love, or even punish. They would love God. They would say they do, but then they might feel that they themselves are not good enough for him. What about the avoidant? The avoidant would trust the self more than God. They may say, oh yeah, I trust God, but they would trust themselves more. Oh, I see that a lot in myself. Difficulty drawing close to God's love. Say they love God, and they do, but is sometimes suspicious of his character, especially in times of suffering, and may see God as distant or feel like he's so far. The disorganized might feel afraid of God, but still longs for his love at the same time. Feel uncomfortable with both closeness and distance from God. Can mistrust God and mistrust themselves. Sounds confusing already, right? What a turmoil. And then feel God is good one day, and then another time, I don't think he loves me. Now, all of that was pretty tough to listen to, but there's good news, right? The good news is that we can have a secure attachment style with God because Jesus Christ died for us and paved the way for us to be reunited with him. And as Pastor Jeff mentioned earlier, that gospel message. We can restore and develop a secure attachment with God because he desires us to know he is ever attuning to us. And during the workshop before, we focused on how the first relationship that we have to deepen is between me and God. But God doesn't want to stop there, right? He bestows his love to us, and therefore I can be empowered to deepen the connection with others. Would that be for the purpose of feeling lovey-dovey? I mean, that's nice. It's a nice cherry on top, and it is a blessing. But I think it would be for John 17:23. Jesus audibly prays to the Father, I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Jesus was experiencing God's attunement to him all the time. That's why so many of his hours of the day was in prayer and meditation. And he's saying, as you have loved me, and you love them, and I love them. May they love one another. Then the world will know. The purpose of this restoration and reconnection and deepening connections with others around us, our family first, and our neighbors, our co-workers, our friends, our community, is for then the world will know, right? And did you know that the spiritual battle of the devil not wanting the world to know Jesus as their Christ, he's going to use relationships. Break the relationships so they won't know, but also the power of the enemy is broken during reconciliation and restoration and deepening of connections. Now, a little bit more education about input for attachment. These are the necessary things: eye contact, touch, movement, smiles, especially smiles in the eyes, nutrition, and reciprocity. Not only reciprocity between a parent and child, but reciprocity between spouses. All these 7 items, right? It's not just what we needed growing up. We need these things right now. And if you see or know any of these are missing, or maybe not as strongly experienced, we can work on them even right now. I found this image online. I told you I steal a lot from the internet. It's about the healthy attachment cycle. And it starts off with a need, okay? This is starting from birth until now, okay? There's a need like hunger, pain, discomfort that will lead to what we call a rage reaction, or more easily put, arousal. Being angry, crying, upset. And from this point of the cycle to the next point, in between these moments, is where your parent would have needed to come in and intervene. And if there was persistent deviation of meeting these needs, that would cause the unhealthy cycles. So let's say that the caregiver meets that need. Immediately, relief will result and gratification. And then that would lead to a development and strengthening of trust. Oh, I'm okay. This caregiver next to me, holding me, they're all right, they're okay. We can move on. Now I'm going to conclude with 4 passages to prove how much God desires for you to know how much He loves you and is ever attuning to you with an unwavering gaze. And as we increase this experience of secure attachment with God, the restoration of relationships in our daily lives, in our real lives, will naturally begin. It will be the result. So let's slowly read and listen and meditate on these truths, starting with Jeremiah 31:3. The Lord appeared to us in the past, saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. Deuteronomy 31:8 says, the Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Especially to those of you who have had anxious attachment experiences. But also, the Lord wants to touch and soften the avoidant attachment experiences. And He wants to remove the scars of disorganized attachment experiences. Zephaniah 3:17 says, the Lord your God is with you. The Mighty One will save you. The Lord will be happy with you. You will rest in His love. He will sing and be joyful about you. Now, you may not feel happy about Jesus Christ loving you, but God is happy. This is what this verse is saying, and joyful about you. He is tickled pink that you believe in Him. Even just a little. He's so happy. Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And then though there are scars that remain from our past and negative memories resurface once in a while, and they affect my relationships right now, God wants to drive this message in, that He is with you. He will never leave you, even through the darkest times of life, and even through the daily grueling grind that we partake in every single day. Okay, so that concludes this seminar, and as Luana was sharing, we're going to do table discussion groups, and you'll see they're already split up in 6 tables, so that's your discussion group for today, and then Luana will guide us on when to regroup again. So see you soon.